In this video, we are going to go over some of the main rules that you need to know for any game. This is Master the Game. I am Juice. Let's get started. Make sure you head on over to rpgjuice.com, where you can get caught up on the latest videos, the latest news, and blog posts from Juice himself. In a previous video where I talked about how do I roleplay, I had mentioned not to worry about the rules. Now, that's true. However, there's always a but. In this video, I really want to discuss some of the things you really should know, especially if you've played more than one session before. So the first thing I really want to drive home is you need to know the core rules. Just know, when you roll what dice. You don't need to know any situational modifiers or anything like that. You just need to know what dice do I roll to do certain things. For example, what do I roll if I'm making an attack? For example, if it's a d20 based game, you're almost always going to roll a d20. You're then going to add your modifiers from your character sheet. Some games don't even use a d20 though, and in fact some games will switch up what dice you roll. Systems like 7D System, Savage Worlds are just two off the top of my head where you're going to roll different dice for some of the same things. For example, in the 7D System, you might roll 2d6 to do something one time, but then another time you're trying to do the same thing, but it's a little harder, so it might be 1d8. So again, that might make it a little bit harder to understand what to roll with when. However, usually systems like that try to keep their rule set simpler. Savage Worlds, for example, will be very similar, where you're going to roll different dice for different things. However, with Savage Worlds, it's going to be based on what's on your character sheet. So it's a little different than, say, 7D System, where it's always changing. Whereas in Savage Worlds, it's going to be a set thing. Like if I'm shooting a gun, it's a pistol, and I'm always shooting this pistol, it's always going to be the same roll. So you're always rolling, say, the d6 and your 2d6s, because you're going to have a wild die and your skill for that. So some systems have some variety with how you roll dice, others don't. A game like Fantasy Age is always rolling 3d6. You will never roll anything other than that. So that one might even be a little bit simpler. So again, it's all going to just depend on the game you're playing, but you should understand just the basics of your system. You'll see in other videos on this channel, we do system basics. For example, Dungeons & Dragons Basic Series is going to cover the basics you should know to play the game. I just want to give a quick shout out to the software D&D Beyond. If you're playing D&D and you're not using D&D Beyond, you are missing out. So head on over to D&D Beyond. You'll just need a Twitch account to get started and check it out. See what they have to offer. I guarantee you it will improve your gaming experience beyond your wildest dreams. Depending on the type of character you're playing, you should really know how your abilities work and your spells and your attacks. These are things that you're going to use very frequently, and so you should really have a firm understanding of how it works. So if you're a fighter, it'll be a little bit simpler than, say, if you're a wizard, assuming you're playing a fantasy game. When you're playing a fighter, you really only need to know what you roll once you've hit. That's fairly simple. There are some abilities that allow you to roll extra dice and to do more than just hit, like a paladin's smite ability or a battle master fighter. With a wizard, you're going to have lots of different spells. Each spell is going to work differently. Some spells in 5th edition, for example, you're going to have where you roll a ranged attack. Others, it's going to be a touch attack. And there are even times when you don't roll, and it's up to the monsters to roll in order to not be hit. So it varies. It's just important to make sure you understand these things. Now, when you're in the game, I would encourage you not to wait till your turn to read these things. In fact, have an idea one or two turns ahead. Say it's the person right before you is about to do something, and you're like, okay, I think I want to do this. You should really think about what you're doing all the time, like what you want to do based on what you see happening. And with that, look up your spells at that time. Look up your abilities at that time. Don't go into your turn and say, I think I want to do this. Let me read this. That's not fun for anybody else. It's going to hold the game up, and it's probably going to make your game master a little bit upset too. So again, to keep things flowing, understand your rules of your character, at least, at the bare minimum. If it's your first time, everyone knows it's going to be a little bit slower for you, and that's okay. But after 2-3 sessions, you should really understand your character's abilities within the game. Other things you're going to want to know is how you do your skill checks and things like that. Again, it's not so much about what's the best from a mechanic standpoint. It's just understanding what to roll and when. There's nothing worse than when you're sitting at the table and your DM says, yeah, okay, roll for it, and you don't know what to roll. That's not a lot of fun. If you've never played tabletop RPGs before and you don't know what dice are what, you should definitely know which dice are which. And there are systems out there that use special dice. I'm talking about fate dice, where it's a plus, a minus, and a blank sided. Fantasy Flight Star Wars uses dice with special symbols on it. You can play the game without the symbols and just associate numbers to the symbols. But again, just understand what they do. And another game, again, Fantasy Age, which I like to refer to because that's a fun game. One die is a stunt die. Understand how that works. It's a very core thing to that game, and it's very simple to learn that one aspect of the game as well. So make sure you learn these things. If you have any questions about what you should know about the game, ask your game master to explain it to you, and they'll tell you what they expect, because clear expectations are very important and can make your game run a lot smoother as a player and a game master. So have the same understanding of what is expected of your players as well as your game master, and everything will go smooth. I know this was a shorter video than normal, and that's because I don't think rules are that important in a role-playing game. In fact, I think a lot of times you can bypass rules. I tend to go with the rule of cool a lot of times. So not all game masters are like that. In fact, there are a lot of systems out there that have a lot of situational rules, and there are people who like that because there are so many rules for different scenarios. There are simulationists out there who really like a rule for almost every occasion, and this all goes back to knowing about play styles of your groups. And rules and play styles do have some overlap in some ways. When it comes down to it, these two things kind of go hand in hand. And so you need to know what your group is going to be more like. Because again, I know there are groups that don't like a lot of dice rolls, and there are some that have you roll dice rolls for everything. So again, it just depends on what you and your group like. Your game master is the one that's going to steer you in the right direction on this. So whatever they say pretty much goes. And, it's just how it is. If you find that after playing a couple times you don't like how much dice rolling is going on or the lack of it, find a new group. Don't give up on the hobby. Just look for a group that better matches what you like. And maybe it's the system that's the problem. Maybe you don't like something that is overly complex and requires a dice roll to tie your shoes. Or maybe you don't like systems that are too simple. Why are you rolling the same thing for one thing as another thing? And how come you don't have to make a climb check in a non-stressful situation? Because there should always be a chance for failure. It just depends, So some people, rules light is the way to go. And sometimes crunchy, in other words, lots of rules, is the way to go. So as you play more and you try different things, you'll find rule sets that work for you, and you'll find out which rules you need to know for various games. But ask your game master and they'll guide you as well. If you're still watching, I know you like this video, so smash that subscribe button. Give me a like and leave a comment below depending on what systems you play. Maybe you have some rules that you think are very important. I would love to see what that is below. If you have any questions about a particular system, I would happily answer that for you. Just leave it again in the comments below. And the last thing I'm going to ask you to do is please go on over to rpgjuice.com. That's my website. You'll see the latest news, blog posts, videos, downloads for different games, and I would greatly appreciate it. This was Master the Game. I am Juice. Game on.